Hey everybody, this is Vince Miller. Thank you so much for joining me for another video. Today we're going to be talking about how to plan a men's retreat, how to plan your own men's retreat. And if you're watching this video, then I can probably assume that you might be a leader of men. And I love guys like you, guys who get off the spiritual bench and get into the leadership game of men. Men who actually want to have a lasting impact on the lives of other men. Now, I want you to know before we even begin that this endeavor is not easy, but the rewards are incredible and supernatural. And in a world that constantly demands more of our attention and of men, it's getting more and more difficult for men to prioritize their own spiritual growth. But I will say this, nothing incites spiritual change like a men's retreat. It's still one of the greatest tools we have at our disposal for initiating and inciting growth in men. And when it's done well, it can spark life change for guys, for marriages, for families, and workplaces. And your role in organizing a retreat for them is crucial. And today, I'm going to give you some general pointers that I hope will help you before you ever begin. And so note this. I am speaking from a lot of experience. I have attended and led and spoken at hundreds of men's retreats, and I've seen everything. The biggest and the smallest, and some of the best and the worst. And I have seen some crazy things, just so you know. So I hope this short little video will help you to avoid some of those mistakes that maybe I've seen others make. So here are your 4 pointers today. Number 1 is this. First, you've got to make a commitment. You have to make a commitment. You see, commitment is where every retreat that was ever planned began. And I'm talking about a personal commitment by you and no one else. Not your pastor, not your church, not a group of men, just you. You and only you. Because all it takes is one committed man to incite a movement of men. We see this play out all the time. Just go read the stories of the Bible. It was always one committed man who initiated a movement of men. For example, consider Jesus. Obviously, he was a committed man and then found other men to commit to following him. In fact, that's how this whole thing started. That's how it works. So you are going to have to be committed first to Jesus and then, of course, to the retreat. And then other men will see your commitment and follow because of it. But if you don't really make the commitment, others are going to know it because men can sense non-commitment like a mile away. And if you aren't committed, then they won't commit either. So don't even continue listening to this video unless you're really committed to doing something about it. Okay? Here's principle or pointer number 2. Assemble a team. Assemble a team. Now, the second thing you need to do after you've made a commitment, which you have done, by the way, because you're still listening to this video, is you got to gather a team. And you need a team of men who can come around the vision and the mission of the retreat. And in another lesson, I'll get more into the vision and the mission for maybe a men's retreat. But for now, just assemble a group of men. And you don't need a lot of guys, by the way. I would start with maybe about 3 to 5, and don't worry about inviting them to some complicated role or task or creating a job description. You don't need that. These job descriptions and tasks will reveal themselves over time, but you do have to be concerned about one thing. When you recruit men for this team, they've got to be committed to doing one thing and only one thing. Recruiting men, because recruiting men for the retreat is the hardest and most neglected task of every men's retreat. So find guys who don't have a problem inviting other men, or just find men who already have an influence over groups of men. And then be clear with them and very upfront that when they're invited to the team, that the most important task that they're going to do is recruit men. You have to assemble a team who can assemble men. You got that? Assemble a team who can actually assemble men. Number 3, the third pointer is this. Determine a structure for the retreat. Determine a structure. Now, the easiest way to determine a structure is to begin with a frame of time and reverse engineer it. Now, usually retreats that I attend last for about a day and a half to maybe 2 days, right? Most of them begin on Friday night and conclude on Saturday night or on Sunday morning. And there are other shorter options, which I can address in a different video. But for weekend retreats that are a day to a day and a half, start by clarifying when in the schedule you will gather for two things: meals and meetings. That's it. Meals and meetings. This is the physical and the spiritual meat of the time. So for 2-day retreats, here's usually what happens. You get 5 meals and you get 4 meetings. That's it. And they're stacked over on top of one another. So start there and then fill in all the other time with whatever competitions and games and sports and conversations and groups and all the other things that you kind of want to add in, right? And be careful here. Don't overdo it. I have been to some men's retreats where there's no retreating at all. They're exhausting. You might as well call them men's exhaust, which might be a cool name if you're doing like a race meeting with men, but ain't so cool when you're trying to do a retreat where you're trying to get spiritual meat to these men so that their lives can be changed. Here's the fourth pointer. Fourth, determine the speaker and the theme. Determine the speaker and the theme in that order. Now, early in the process, you need to find a speaker. And I would find someone who is both these things, biblically literate and can speak to men. And as a teacher and preacher who has spoken at hundreds of men's retreats, I'm going to tell you, based on the positive feedback I get, it's hard to find someone who does both of these things well. So you need to get out there early and often and get the men who can do both on your calendar for your retreat. And be extra careful here, because sometimes just because a professional athlete or a business leader works with men and has written a book and has faith in Jesus does not automatically mean that he can do both these things, that he's biblically literate and can speak to men. I have witnessed the tragedy of this at numerous retreats and conferences and special events. So don't make the same mistake. Plus, it's often an expensive mistake, and it might end up being the end of you and your retreat. So once you find the right guy, then ask him to determine the theme and build your retreat around that. It's very hard to find a preacher or a teacher who's going to teach your subject matter or topic unless you're going to pay them some serious money. I mean, when someone asks me to do a specialty topic, I charge them 4 times more every single time, mainly because it requires more time for me to develop the topic around their theme. And other than that, I mean, just to be quite honest with you, I can go to the coffers for hundreds of talks that I've already done hundreds of times that I know that works. And that's a lot easier than trying to meet the demands of your topic or theme. So find a speaker first and then build out the theme. Got it? So in conclusion, planning a men's retreat requires personal commitment, assembling a dedicated team, creating a balanced structure, and then finding a speaker who can inspire your men. Follow these pointers and you will leave a lasting impact on other guys. Remember, you're not alone, fellas. You can reach out to me at vincemiller.com for any kind of assistance and maybe even materials to support your men's group or small group leadership. Remember, I'm also available for any kind of speaking that you may need. And as always, live all in for him who lived all in for you.